Daniel had always thought his life on the colony would be quiet. He was a young engineer who fixed machines, repaired old generators, and made sure the power grid in his district worked smoothly. Most days were simple. He worked during daylight. Hours ate simple meals and returned to his small house near the colony's edge. But everything changed on the day he received an unusual package. The message had come from the colony council. It explained that his late mentor, Professor Grant, had left something for him. Grant had been more than just a teacher. He had been like a second father. The professor had taught Daniel how to repair machinery, how to solve problems calmly, and even how to dream bigger than the dusty frontier world they lived on. So when the council informed Daniel of the inheritance, he expected a box of tools, some old notebooks, or maybe even one of the professor's strange, half-finished inventions. Instead, he found himself staring at a tall figure stepping out of a silver transport pod. The figure was not human. She stood with a quiet grace, her posture elegant but relaxed. Her skin had a faint shimmer, almost like polished stone, glowing softly under the colony's twin suns. Her eyes were large and bright, reflecting more colors than Daniel could name. She wore a simple uniform, almost like a robe crossed with practical work clothes. When she spoke, her voice was calm but carried a strange rhythm. "You are Daniel, student of Grant?" Daniel blinked, unsure what to say. He had expected machinery, not her. "Yes," he managed. "And you are?" She bowed slightly, placing one hand over her chest. "My name is Leora. I was sent by my people to serve you. It is the last will of Grant. He saved my family once many years ago. For that, we owe him a life debt. I am here to honor it." Daniel's mouth fell open. "Wait, serve me? No, that's not. I don't need a servant." Leora tilted her head, studying him carefully. "It is not for you to decide. It is for me. My culture demands that I repay this debt. I am assigned as your caretaker, your helper, your maid." The word sounded odd coming from her, almost formal. Daniel rubbed his forehead. "Look, I appreciate the thought, but this doesn't make sense. I live alone. I don't need—" But before he could finish, Leora was already stepping past him into the house. She moved with quiet precision, her eyes scanning every corner of the small living space. Daniel hurried after her, trying to protest, but she was faster, more curious. "This is your dwelling? Interesting. The walls are crude but strong. The air circulator is outdated. I will clean, repair, and improve what I can. You will allow me to do so." Daniel almost laughed at her confidence. "You really don't give me a choice, do you?" Leora glanced back at him, her shimmering eyes calm but firm. "No. My honor does not allow me to leave until my duty is fulfilled." A strange first. Day by the afternoon, Daniel realized that Leora was not like any visitor he had ever met. She didn't simply do chores, she studied them. When she swept the floor, she moved slowly, repeating the action again and again as if memorizing the rhythm. Then she would pause and look back at Daniel. "Peek. Observe me. Am I correct?" "Chew." First, Daniel thought she was joking. Yes? You're sweeping just fine." She nodded seriously and continued, this time trying to adjust her grip on the broom. Again she stopped and asked him to look. "Peek again. I must know if I am improving." It became a pattern. Every time she tried something new, washing, dishes, folding blankets, even boiling water for tea, she would call Daniel to watch. Her requests were direct, almost commanding, but her tone was full of curiosity. Daniel found it both amusing and exhausting. "You don't need me to watch you every second, Leora. You can just don't do it." But she shook her head. "In my culture, to be unseen is to be unvalued. We show our worth by allowing others to witness our mistakes and our growth. If you do not peek, then my actions are meaningless." Daniel leaned against the wall, trying to process this. To him, chores were boring necessities. To her, they were lessons, tests, even performances. Memories of Grant. That night, after Leora had finally sat down to rest, Daniel found himself remembering Professor Grant. The old man had always been eccentric. He had often spoken about alien traditions, respect between cultures, and the importance of understanding how others viewed the world. Maybe this was his final lesson. Daniel stared at Leora, who was quietly studying a small lamp as though it were a priceless artifact. Her curiosity reminded him of how Grant used to smile when showing him a new gadget. Maybe that was why the professor had arranged this, so Daniel would learn patience, humility, and respect for cultures that seemed strange at first. A misunderstanding. The next morning, Daniel woke up to the sound of loud clattering. He rushed to the kitchen only to find Leora surrounded by broken metal pieces. She had tried to repair his old generator by herself. "Leora, what did you do?" he cried, horrified. At the mess, she looked up calmly. "I peeked at your tools. I wanted to learn, but I am not yet skilled. Observe my failure, Daniel. See it, so it may become success tomorrow." Daniel groaned, picking up scattered bolts. "You're going to give me a heart attack. You can't just take things apart like this without asking." She tilted her head. "Do you forbid me?" Daniel sighed. He couldn't stay angry. "No, but next time ask first, and if you want to learn, I'll teach you." Her eyes lit up at his words. "Then you will peek while I work?" "Yes," he said reluctantly. "I'll peek." And for the first time, Leora smiled warmly. The beginning of something new by. The end of the week, Daniel's life was no longer quiet. His days were filled with constant requests from Leora, asking him to watch, to correct, to guide. She rearranged his tools in ways that made no sense to him, but fascinated her. She tried human recipes but added alien spices that turned simple meals into strange but delicious surprises. At first, Daniel had resisted, but slowly, he began to see the joy in her actions. Her determination to learn, her honesty in showing, her failures and her constant insistence that he peek made him realize something important. Maybe life wasn't about being left alone with his machines. Maybe it was about being present for someone else, even if it meant watching them stumble through mistakes. And as Daniel drifted to sleep that night, listening to the soft hum of the repaired generator, he found himself smiling. His life had become unpredictable, noisy, and even chaotic. But deep inside, he felt that this was exactly what Professor Grant had wanted for him, a new beginning. Life in Daniel's house had changed in ways he could not have imagined. Where once there had been silence, now there was constant movement, quiet humming, and a peculiar rhythm that followed Leora everywhere she went. Daniel had thought he knew what it meant to live alone. He had thought his days of quiet reflection, tinkering with machines and reading old manuals would continue for years. But Leora had a different idea. Each morning, she woke before the sun, her movements smooth and precise. She would stretch, in ways Daniel could barely imitate, then begin her chores, not out of obligation but out of curiosity. And she wanted him to watch. "Peek," she would say. And when he did, he began to see the purpose behind her actions. Watching, learning, and laughing one morning, Daniel entered the kitchen to find Leora carefully washing dishes. Not the usual rinse and scrub, but a meticulous process. Each plate, examined, cleaned, and inspected from every angle. "Why are you doing that?" Daniel asked, half amused, half concerned. "Observation," Leora replied, her voice calm and even. "In my culture, every action has meaning. You cannot simply clean. You must understand the essence of the object and the energy it holds. Peek. Learn." Daniel raised an eyebrow but did as she asked. He crouched slightly, watching her hands move. She handled the dishes as if they were delicate instruments, swaying slightly as she examined each corner. "You are thorough," he said finally. Leora's eyes glimmered with satisfaction. "And you are seeing it. That is important. If you did not peek, my effort would vanish into nothingness." At first, Daniel had felt embarrassed by the request. But now, he began to understand. This was not about showing off or being demanding. It was about trust, about being witnessed while learning. Unexpected lessons. It did not take long for Daniel to notice how much he was learning from her. Leora was constantly experimenting. She tried to cook, often combining human ingredients with alien techniques she had studied in her people's manuals. One day she announced she would attempt bread. Daniel, used to simple recipes, was curious. He watched as she mixed dough with precision, pressing it in unusual patterns and letting it rise in a shallow pan rather than a deep one. "Why do you do it this way?" Daniel asked, peering over her shoulder. "My people measure life by balance," she explained. "Bread is more than food. It is energy, structure, and time. Peek. You will understand." When she finally removed the loaf from the oven, it was golden and slightly unusual in shape. Daniel hesitated, unsure whether to try it. But the taste surprised him. Warm, soft, slightly sweet, with a subtle tang that reminded him of fruits he had never eaten. "This is incredible," he said. Leora smiled. "And you peeked. That makes it real." Curiosity beyond chores. Leora did not stop at household tasks. She was fascinated by everything in Daniel's life. When he repaired machines, she hovered nearby, asking questions that were sometimes confusing, sometimes brilliant. "Why do you use this wire?" she asked one afternoon, pointing to a frayed piece in a generator. Daniel scratched his head. "Because it conducts electricity better than the others." "But why do you care?" "Observation," she said simply. "Understanding you is understanding the world. Humans see with their eyes, but we see with energy, purpose, and intent. Peek. Watch carefully." Daniel laughed. "I feel like I'm being tested constantly." "You are," Leora admitted. "But not as you think. This is not a test of skill. It is a test of patience and attention. Can you see without judging? Can you notice without interfering?" Daniel found himself reflecting on her words. He had spent his life judging mistakes, correcting flaws, and rushing through tasks. Leora's approach was different. She welcomed errors, celebrated them even, as part of learning. A walk outside. One afternoon, Leora suggested a walk outside. Daniel hesitated, unsure why a maid would want to leave the house, but she insisted. The air was crisp, and the twin suns of the colony shone softly over the dusty landscape. Leora walked ahead, her steps graceful, almost floating above the uneven ground. She stopped frequently, kneeling to examine a rock, the structure of a plant or a bird-like creature hopping nearby. "Peek," she said suddenly, holding out a small, luminescent plant. "Do you see it? Not just the color, but the structure, the way it stores energy for survival. Humans often ignore these details." "Peek." Daniel crouched beside her. He had never really looked at anything in this way before. The plant glowed softly, and for the first time, he felt a strange connection to the world around him. "You're right," he said quietly. "I never noticed this before." Leora's eyes shone brighter. "Then your sight is growing. That is my gift." Curiosity turns into bond. By the end of the second week, Daniel realized that his feelings toward Leora were changing. At first, he had been hesitant, uneasy, even embarrassed by her constant requests to watch her. But now he was fascinated. He noticed the subtle patterns in her movements, the care she took in her work, and the joyful curiosity in her eyes. Watching her was no longer a burden. It was a privilege. One evening, Daniel found her sitting on the porch, gazing at the stars. He joined her, hesitant but willing. "You are looking at the sky," he said. "Do your people also do this?" "They do," Leora replied softly. "But we see the flow of energy between stars, not just their light. I wanted you to see it too." "Peek." Daniel laughed quietly. "I guess I'm peeking a lot these days." "And you are learning," she said. "Not just about me, but about yourself." He realized she was right. Through her curiosity, he was beginning to see details, patterns, and meanings he had always missed. He was noticing the way the wind moved, how the dust settled, how small creatures interacted with the world. Her requests to watch, to peek, were teaching him a new kind of attention, learning from mistakes. Even when things went wrong, Daniel found himself enjoying it. One morning, Leora attempted to repair a solar panel herself. She misaligned a few components, causing a small spark. Daniel rushed over. "Careful!" he shouted. Leora looked at him calmly. "I wanted you to see. Peek. I must learn through error as humans do. You must not be upset." Daniel breathed deeply, realizing she was right. He had been quick to correct mistakes in his life, in work and in others. But now he saw the value of allowing errors to happen. "It's fine," he said, finally smiling. "You'll get it next time." And she did. Over the next hour, she fixed the panel perfectly. Daniel could not help but feel proud, not of himself but of her. Small joys in the evenings, they shared small joys. Daniel taught her how to play simple human games while she shared stories of her people's rituals, celebrations, and ways of seeing the world. "Your stories are strange," Daniel admitted one night. "But somehow, they make sense." "They are different," Leora said. "But differences are what make life rich. Peek, notice them, and you grow." Daniel realized she had a point. Life on the colony had been predictable, but now every day was new, filled with lessons, discoveries, and laughter. He had never imagined that a maid, alien or otherwise, could change so much about the way he saw the world. Understanding each. By the end of part 2, Daniel understood that Leora's constant requests to peek were not just about chores or tasks. They were about connection. They were about being seen, understood, and acknowledged. Through her curiosity, he learned patience, empathy, and a deeper way of noticing the world. And in return, Leora learned about humans, not just their habits, but their feelings, their humor, and their warmth. Daniel knew one thing for certain: life with Leora would never be boring, and somehow he welcomed it. Life with Leora had become a rhythm Daniel could never have imagined. The mornings began with her gentle calls to peek. The afternoons were filled with experiments, meals, and curious lessons, and the evenings ended under the twin suns, as they watched the horizon together. Yet outside the quiet walls of his house, the colony had begun to notice. Rumors and whispers, it started as small remarks from neighbors. A few colonists passed by Daniel's house, raising eyebrows at the sight of Leora tending the garden or carrying baskets of tools. "Who is that?" one neighbor whispered. "I've never seen anyone like her in the colony." "She's not human," another replied. "I heard she was sent by some alien group. I don't know if I trust her." By the end of the week, the whispers grew louder. Children pointed at the shimmering figure moving gracefully, and some adults muttered concerns about spies or unknown intentions. Daniel tried to ignore the gossip, focusing instead on the work and lessons Leora was sharing. But he could feel the tension building. A confrontation one morning. Daniel was repairing an old generator when 2 colony officials arrived at his doorstep. Their expressions were serious, almost accusing. "Daniel," one of them began, "we need to discuss your guest." Leora stepped beside him, calm and poised, as if she had been expecting them. "These are my neighbors?" she asked, her voice curious rather than frightened. "Yes," Daniel replied, sighing. "They want to know why you're here." The officials glanced at her suspiciously. "She's not human," one said bluntly. "We're concerned about the safety of the colony. Who sent her and why?" Leora bowed slightly. "I am here because of a life debt. My presence honors a promise. I mean no harm. I am a servant, a learner, and a friend to Daniel." Daniel nodded. "She's telling the truth. She's not here to spy or hurt anyone. She's here to learn and to teach me." The officials looked skeptical, but they could see the sincerity in Leora's eyes. Still, they had a duty to investigate. Curiosity meets suspicion. Word of the alien maid spread quickly. The colony council called Daniel and Leora to present their case. Daniel felt nervous. He had never been in a position where his private life, was under scrutiny, and now it involved someone from another species. When they arrived at the council hall, a crowd had gathered. Some people stared, curious and fearful. Others whispered and pointed. "Explain your relationship with this being," a council member demanded. Daniel hesitated. "Leora is different, yes. But she is not dangerous. She is here because of a promise made long ago, and she's teaching me a lot about patience, observation, and understanding." Leora stepped forward, speaking clearly. "In my culture, to serve is to learn. To allow someone to watch is a sign of trust. Daniel is learning not only how to see me, but how to see the world in a new way." A murmur ran through the crowd. People were not used to this kind of honesty or openness. Many of them still viewed her as strange, even threatening. Demonstrating value, the council decided that words alone were not enough. Daniel and Leora were asked to demonstrate how her presence benefited the colony. Back at Daniel's house, they prepared a simple experiment. Leora combined her alien techniques with Daniel's engineering knowledge to improve the colony's water recycling system. The demonstration was simple but effective. Water that had previously trickled slowly through filters now moved faster, cleaner, and more efficiently. Even the skeptics in the council nodded, impressed. "See?" Daniel said quietly to Leora. "You're making a difference." Leora smiled softly. "And you peaked. That is what matters most." Lessons in humanity. The process of defending Leora in front of the council taught Daniel something important. People were afraid of what they did not understand. And yet, when shown evidence of kindness, skill, and honesty, they could be convinced. He realized that his life with Leora was more than companionship. It was a bridge between two worlds. She was teaching him about her culture, and he was teaching the colony about humans and trust. Even small gestures became lessons. When Leora carefully repaired a broken tool, she explained each step, allowing anyone watching to learn. When Daniel showed her how to brew tea, he included lessons about timing, temperature, and patience. The colony began to see her as more than an alien maid. They saw a partner, a teacher, and a friend. Misunderstandings and fears. Despite these small successes, not everyone was convinced. Some colonists still whispered about spies and secrets. They were concerned about the strange symbols she drew when taking notes, or the way she seemed to peek at even the smallest details of human life. One afternoon, a young engineer approached Daniel. "I don't know if we should trust her," he said nervously. "She's different. What if she's gathering information for her people?" Daniel shook his head. "She's not here to spy, she's learning, and she's teaching me, which helps all of us. You just have to watch closely, like she asks. Then you'll understand." Leora, overhearing the conversation, stepped forward. "Trust is built by observation, not fear. Peek, watch me. See that my work is honest. That is how trust begins." Her words carried a quiet authority that made the young engineer pause. He nodded slowly, realizing she was sincere. The community begins to accept over the next few weeks. Daniel and Leora worked tirelessly to demonstrate her skills and intentions. They repaired generators, improved water filtration, and taught children simple lessons about energy and observation. The colony began to change its opinion. People were no longer afraid. They were curious. They began to peek, just as Leora had asked Daniel to do, watching her work and learning from her mistakes and successes. Even the council members, initially skeptical, started to appreciate the unique contributions she brought. They began to see the value of combining human ingenuity with alien knowledge. Bond strengthens. Under pressure. Through it all, Daniel and Leora's bond grew stronger. The constant scrutiny from the colony could have driven them apart, but instead, it made their teamwork even more effective. Daniel had learned patience, humility, and the importance of observation. Leora had learned how humans think, react, and respond to trust and fear. Together, they formed a partnership based on mutual respect and curiosity. One evening, after a long day of repairs and explanations, Daniel watched Leora as she cleaned the porch. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over her shimmering skin. "You've changed my life," he said quietly. Leora paused and looked at him. "And you have taught me too. To be seen is a gift, Daniel. And you have given me that gift." He smiled, realizing that despite the cultural clash, despite the gossip and fear, they had found understanding. Reflection and hope as the sun disappeared below the horizon, Daniel thought about the colony, the council, and the people who had doubted them. He realized that fear often masked curiosity, and misunderstanding could be overcome with patience and proof. Leora, sitting beside him, quietly hummed a melody from her planet. It was soft, soothing, and entirely unfamiliar, yet somehow comforting. Daniel understood that this was only the beginning. Challenges would come, misunderstandings would continue, but with Leora by his side, he felt prepared to face them. Together, they could teach the colony a new way to see and understand, bridging cultures and creating something truly extraordinary. And as he watched the first stars appear in the twin skies above, Daniel knew that life with Leora was no longer about chores or curiosity alone. It was about trust, connection, and the courage to face differences with openness and patience. For the first time, he truly understood what his mentor, Professor Grant, had always meant when he said that learning and understanding were the greatest powers a human could possess. Daniel had grown used to the rhythm of life with Leora, yet nothing could prepare him for the Council's unexpected summons. One morning, as the twin suns rose over the colony, an official message arrived. Daniel and Leora were required to appear at the Council chamber for further evaluation. The note was polite but firm, emphasizing that the Council wanted to understand the nature of Leora's presence and her purpose among humans. Daniel felt a mix of nervousness and curiosity. Leora, however, seemed calm, almost serene, as if she already knew the outcome. "Why are they calling us again?" Daniel asked as they walked through the dusty streets. "Because humans do not always see the full purpose immediately," Leora said softly. "Sometimes tests are hidden until the moment is right. Peek, observe, and you may understand." Daniel sighed. Hidden tests? He was beginning to feel like he was living in one long, strange experiment. The Council chamber. The Council chamber was a large hall with high ceilings and holographic panels displaying the history of the colony. Daniel and Leora entered together, drawing curious glances from council members and other observers. "You may sit," a senior council member said, gesturing to 2 seats at the center. "We have observed your activities for weeks, but we have yet to fully understand why you and your guest interact in this way." Daniel glanced at Leora, who nodded slightly. She stood calmly, her hands folded, her eyes glimmering with quiet confidence. "Your presence here," Daniel began, "is because of a promise. My mentor saved her people long ago, and she is honoring that promise, that is all." The council members exchanged skeptical looks. One of them spoke. "Promises aside, what exactly is she doing here? Is it merely to serve you, or is there a larger purpose we do not see?" Leora stepped forward. "My mission is to serve, yes, but it is also to observe and understand. Your human colleague allows me to learn by witnessing my actions. That is my hidden purpose, and it is intertwined with his." Daniel frowned. "Hidden purpose? What do you mean?" Leora's eyes shimmered. "Peek. Observe carefully. This is the moment to see the true test. The revelation." The council remained silent, waiting. Daniel had no idea what Leora meant. Then, she spoke again. "The true purpose of my presence is not only to serve or learn, it is to test the humans I interact with. My people do not judge strength or intelligence first. We judge patience, trust, and empathy. Can a human allow another to be seen without judgment? Can a human value mistakes as much as successes?" Daniel blinked. He hadn't expected this. "So, all this time, you were testing me?" Leora nodded gently. "Not as punishment, but as understanding. You did not know it, but each request to peek, each moment you observed me, was part of a measure of your character. The council murmured in astonishment. One senior member said, "So, her constant demonstrations and requests were not just for learning. They were designed to evaluate your humanity?" "Yes," Leora replied. "Observation, empathy, and patience are qualities my people seek in allies. You have shown them." Daniel felt a strange mixture of relief and pride. He had been unknowingly participating in a hidden test, and somehow he had passed, demonstrating true understanding. The council requested a demonstration of this hidden test. Leora suggested a simple exercise. She led Daniel to a small workroom filled with broken devices, old energy cells, malfunctioning tools, and dusty generators. "Your task," she explained, "is not to fix these items immediately. Watch me first. Observe, learn, and understand the process, including errors. Then you may act, if needed." Daniel followed her instructions. Leora worked carefully, deliberately, sometimes making small mistakes, sometimes pausing to inspect details he would have overlooked. Daniel observed quietly, refraining from stepping in too soon. "Peek," she reminded him. "Notice each movement, each choice, each decision. This is the measure." He began to understand the depth of the exercise. This was not about skill, it was about observation, patience, and empathy. He could feel his own judgment softening, his mind opening to perspectives he had never considered. By the end of the demonstration, he realized he had learned more from watching Leora than from any manual or lecture. A lesson in trust afterward. The council members spoke. "We have watched closely," one said, "and we see that Daniel allowed Leora to act without immediate interference. You demonstrated trust and patience. These qualities are rare and valuable." Daniel nodded slowly. "I only did what she asked, but I also learned. I never expected that simply watching could teach me so much." Leora smiled softly. "That is the gift of empathy. To witness without judgment is to understand. That is the test my people value above all else." The council members looked impressed. Their expressions softened as they began to appreciate not only Leora's abilities, but also Daniel's response. Unexpected recognition. Following the demonstration, one council member addressed the chamber. "This hidden test shows that humans have a capacity for understanding that matches the best qualities of alien cultures. Through observation and empathy, trust and respect are built. Daniel, you have shown these qualities." Daniel felt a warmth in his chest. He had faced skepticism, gossip, and fear from the colony, yet in the end he had passed a test he did not even know existed. Leora placed a hand on his shoulder lightly. "Peek," she said softly. "See your own growth. You have learned as much as I have." Daniel smiled, realizing she was right. Her presence had changed him, not through words or lessons, but through shared experience, observation, and the patient demand to watch and understand. A deeper connection. The hidden test did more than prove Daniel's patience. It strengthened the bond between him and Leora. Now Daniel understood that her requests to peek were not arbitrary or playful. They were a deep, meaningful part of her culture and purpose. They were invitations to trust, to witness, and to connect. He began to look at her differently, not just as a helper but as a partner in learning, a teacher, and a friend. And Leora in turn began to see his human qualities more deeply, his curiosity, his patience, and his growing empathy. Even the colony began to recognize the value of their partnership. People stopped whispering about spies and started asking questions about her culture, her methods, and what humans could learn from her. Preparing for the future after the council meeting, Daniel and Leora returned home. The streets of the colony were alive with curiosity rather than fear. People had witnessed their demonstration, and the rumor mill had shifted from suspicion to admiration. "Do you think they understand now?" Daniel asked quietly as they walked back to his house. "They begin to," Leora said. "Understanding takes time, but you have shown what humans can achieve when they observe, trust, and connect. That is the beginning." Daniel nodded. He realized that life with Leora was no longer just about chores, lessons, or curiosity. It was about something greater. A partnership that bridged worlds, a test that revealed humanity's strength, and a shared journey toward understanding. Reflection. That night, Daniel sat on the porch while Leora prepared a small meal. The twin moons rose above the colony, casting silver light over the quiet buildings. He thought about the hidden test, about every moment he had spent observing her, learning from mistakes, and practicing patience. He understood now that her presence had been a gift, not only to him but to the entire colony. "Thank you," he said softly. "For everything." Leora looked at him, her eyes shimmering. "And thank you, Daniel, for peeking, for watching without judgment. That is how understanding begins." Daniel smiled, feeling a quiet pride and contentment. The hidden test was over, but their journey was just beginning. Together, they had proven that humanity could rise to challenges, not through strength alone, but through empathy, patience, and the courage to witness and learn. And as the night settled over the colony, Daniel realized that Leora had not only tested him, she had shown him the true meaning of connection, trust, and human potential. The colony was quieter now, at least in the sense that suspicion and rumors had faded. Daniel and Leora had proven themselves to the council, and the citizens had begun to accept the unusual partnership between a human and an alien. Yet Daniel sensed that something had changed beyond the approval of others. Life with Leora was no longer simply about chores, observation, or hidden tests. It had evolved into a shared journey of learning, trust, and unexpected companionship. A choice to make one morning, as sunlight streamed through the small windows of Daniel's house. Leora spoke softly. "Daniel," she said, "my people may call for me soon. I could return to them. My duty, in the eyes of my culture, would be fulfilled by going back." Daniel paused, feeling a strange mix of relief and hesitation. Part of him had expected this day, yet he did not want her to leave. "Leora, if you leave, will I see you again?" he asked quietly. Leora looked at him, her eyes calm but serious. "Perhaps, but this is my choice, not only my duty. I have learned much from you, and I have enjoyed our time together. That is why I wish to remain." Daniel's chest warmed. "You want to stay?" "Yes," she said simply. "Not because duty demands it, but because I choose it. Because your world, your life has become important to me." "Peek," she added softly. "See my decision." Daniel felt a mix of happiness and awe. The alien maid who had once asked him to watch her for training, for observation, and for hidden tests now stood before him, choosing to remain, not as a servant but as a companion. Returning to normalcy, life began to settle into a new rhythm. Leora stayed in the colony not out of obligation but because she wanted to. Daniel found himself enjoying her presence in ways he had never imagined. The morning still began with her cheerful calls to peek, though now the requests were lighter, filled with playful curiosity rather than seriousness. She experimented with recipes, repaired tools, and taught local children the strange but useful techniques of her people. Daniel noticed that he had grown in ways he hadn't realized. He was more patient, more observant, and more willing to understand perspectives beyond his own. He had learned to value mistakes, to see them as opportunities rather than failures, and most importantly, he had learned to connect, to trust, to share, and to enjoy life with another being, even if she was not human. The colony's new perspective. The colony had also changed. Residents who had once whispered behind closed doors now approached Daniel and Leora openly, asking questions, learning about her culture, and seeking advice. Even the council began to look at humans differently, recognizing that the combination of human empathy and alien insight could bring great benefits. "Daniel," one council member said during a meeting, "your partnership with Leora has shown us that humans are capable of trust, patience, and collaboration beyond what we expected. This is a lesson for the entire colony." Daniel smiled quietly. I only did what she asked. She taught me more than I could have imagined. Leora's presence had become a bridge, between species, between cultures, and between past misunderstandings and future possibilities. Shared discoveries. In the weeks that followed, Daniel and Leora explored new projects together. They improved water purification systems, optimized energy storage devices, and even started teaching young students about science, observation, and teamwork. One afternoon, Daniel watched as Leora experimented with a device meant to convert solar energy into a portable battery. She made small errors at first, causing sparks and minor smoke, but each time she would pause, glance at him, and say softly, "Peek. Learn from this." Daniel chuckled. "You make even mistakes seem important." "That is the purpose," Leora replied. "Mistakes are as valuable as success if observed carefully. Peek." Daniel leaned over, studying her hands as she worked. He realized he no longer needed to be told to watch. He wanted to. Observing her had become an act of respect, admiration, and shared understanding. Small moments of joy. Life was not only about work. There were small moments of quiet joy, sharing meals, laughing at her attempts to imitate human expressions, or quietly watching the stars from the porch. One evening, as the twin moons rose, Daniel asked Leora, "Do you miss your world?" She shook her head gently. "I miss it sometimes, but this world, your people, and you have become part of my life. I have learned to love what is here. Peek. See my happiness." Daniel smiled, realizing that he had also grown attached to her world. The shimmering glow of her skin, her soft voice, her strange but brilliant ideas, they had become part of his daily life, a source of inspiration and companionship. A lesson in humanity. Leora's choice to stay had made Daniel reflect deeply on the meaning of humanity. He realized that humans were remarkable not for their strength or technology alone, but for their capacity to connect, to observe, and to understand others. Her hidden test had taught him patience, empathy, and humility. And now, by choosing to remain, she was showing him another lesson, that connection and choice could be more powerful than duty alone. He understood that the greatest human strength was not domination or control, but the ability to see, understand, and value others, even those very different from themselves. Preparing for the future. As the colony adjusted to their new reality, Daniel and Leora began planning for the future. They discussed new projects, improved infrastructure, and ways to combine human and alien knowledge for the benefit of everyone. But more than that, they learned to value their time together, enjoying quiet moments, playful experiments, and the simple pleasure of being present for each other. One day, Daniel looked at Leora, who was carefully cleaning a generator, and smiled. "You know," he said, "you didn't have to stay. You could have gone back to your people. I chose to stay," she said softly, "because being here with you in your world is meaningful. Duty brought me to you, but choice keeps me here. Peek. See that my presence is more than obligation." Daniel nodded slowly. He could see it now, the difference between duty and choice, between obligation and true connection. A partnership beyond boundaries. In time, their partnership became legendary in the colony. People spoke of the human and the alien who had learned from each other, who had bridged worlds, and who had demonstrated that understanding, patience, and empathy could overcome fear and suspicion. Daniel and Leora's story became an example, for all colonists, a reminder that greatness was not measured by strength or conquest, but by the courage to observe, to trust, and to connect across differences. And through it all, Daniel realized that life had become richer, fuller, and infinitely more interesting than he had ever imagined. Reflection and gratitude. One quiet night, Daniel sat on the porch, the twin moons reflecting on the horizon. Leora joined him, holding a small cup of tea. "I am grateful," Daniel said softly, "for the lessons, for your guidance, for everything." Leora smiled, her eyes shimmering, softly. "And I am grateful for you, Daniel, for peaking, for understanding, and for valuing connection. Together we have learned more than either of us could alone." They sat quietly, watching the stars. Daniel realized that the true value of life was not only in the work they did, but in the connections they forged, the trust they built, and the lessons learned from patience, observation, and choice. In that moment, he knew that Leora's presence in his life was more than duty. It was a gift, a bridge between worlds, and a testament to what humans could achieve when they opened their hearts and minds. A future full of possibilities as the nights passed and the colony grew stronger. Daniel and Leora continued to work together, explore new ideas, and teach others the value of observation and empathy. The twin suns rose each day, casting light over their small house, their shared life, and the colony they were helping to build. Daniel realized that the world was full of surprises, challenges, and opportunities, and with Leora by his side, he felt ready to face whatever came next. Together, they had proven that duty could evolve into choice, tests could become lessons, and observation could lead to understanding. And more than that, they had shown the colony and themselves that the greatest strength of humanity lies not in machines, weapons, or power, but in the courage to connect, to learn, and to care. Life with Leora was no longer about obligation, chores, or hidden tests. It was about something far greater, a shared journey, full of curiosity, trust, and endless possibility. And for Daniel, that was the greatest lesson of all.